In set 4, Riot introduced a new type of trait that ended up changing TFT forever. Fortune was born and rewarded players for losing their fights. The longer your loss streak, the more loot you would collect, but before you could collect your cash out, you had to win one fight. Back then I was fascinated with this trait, but I was just a simple TFT player with no means of data mining. I went into the 2 vs 0 mode, rest in peace, and collected every single outcome manually. It made for a great piece of content, but thankfully those days are over. Nowadays either the usual data websites or Mortok himself provides the player base with the full loot table. Over the course of TFT, this type of loot trait has seen many different versions. From Mercenary, Underground or Heartsteel, every one of them has a unique twist. Even though Fortune is making a return in Inkborn Fables, we are not getting a simple reprint. There are new hurdles for players to overcome, so let's crack down on how to reach game-winning cashouts in set 11. Fortune is surprisingly complicated and there is a lot to cover. But before we go over everything, one at a time, there are a few things I want to get out of the way. First of all, this video will not cover 7 Fortune. It is a rare chase trait and something I will cover in the future. Second, everything here is currently based on PBE data. This is often prone to change, which is why you can find a written guide about everything that I talk about, including the loot table, in the description of this video. I will do my best to keep the guide up to date, and if Fortune ends up receiving drastic changes, I will also do a follow-up video on this topic. So how exactly does Fortune in set 11 work? The trait has 5 units with Koboko, Teemo, Tristana, Zoe and Annie. There's also an elusive emblem that you can get from augments or a Tome of Traits. With 3 units you can activate the trait and the game will spawn a money tree on the left side of your board. Initially the game rolls a dice telling you in how many turns you can receive a cash out. Losing several fights in a row will gradually grant you more points, and once you reach specific thresholds you receive better loot. Similar to Heartsteel, you can also decide to push your luck instead of cashing out. This will result in a new dice roll that tells you in how many rounds you can either cash out or push your luck again. So far, everything sounds rather basic. Before we get to the loot table, let's talk about how points are calculated. No matter when you field Fortune, your first loss will always grant you only a single point. In stage 2, every following loss adds 1 more point to your streak. In short, this means you start off with +1 and from there it goes to +2, +3, +4 and +5. The total points you can collect in stage 2 are therefore 1, then 3, then 6, then 10 and finally 15. Once you reach stage 3, this will change. After you lose in stage 3 for the first time, the game doesn't add +1 to your streak, instead it will add +3. If you come from a full lose streak in stage 2, then the game still remembers that it's supposed to give you 6 points if you lose in stage 3-1. Afterwards, the new system kicks in, so instead of 7, your streak goes to 9. Everything from here on is in increments of 3, meaning you have +9, +12, +15 and +18. The system for stage 4 is the same, so you can expect your streak counter to increase by 3 points as well with every loss. It only changes in stage 5, where your streak starts to advance by 5, but this is so late into the game that you can ignore this most of the time. I put together a table that shows you the total points you can expect if you lose streak starting in either stage 2 or 3. For example, if you start your lose streak with Fortune in stage 2-1 and you manage to lose all of stage 2 and all of stage 3, you will end up with 75 points when you reach the PvE round. Keep in mind, when you cash out is not up to you, but it's based around your dice rolls. In this game, I decided to push my luck in stage 3-7, hoping for a very small roll to improve my cash out just a tiny bit, but instead I rolled a 5, effectively making the cash out impossible and ruining the entire game. There are a lot of mechanics that can help you to stay alive longer, from augments like Tiny Titans or Metabolic to portals and encounters increasing your base HP. The Fortune trait itself can also help to keep you alive. If you ever find an Annie or an emblem, then you can field 5 Fortune. This will not increase the amount of points you receive. 5 Fortune will only grant you 3 HP at the start of every round against a player to help you stay alive longer. This is the only purpose behind activating the 5-piece. Now let's take a look at the actual loot table. If you're interested in the entire loot table, you can find it in the description of this video. As you can see, the starting breakpoints match up perfectly with the amounts you can gather if you're running Fortune starting in stage 2-1. Later on, with 20 luck, you can receive a spatula, with 30 luck you can find a Tome of Trades, and with 50 luck you can receive a Tactician's Crown for the first time. What's important to note about these thresholds is that there is no in between. 70 luck is the exact same as 94 luck. The only thing that matters is reaching the next threshold. And this brings us to the crux of Fortune. You don't need to win any of your fights to receive the loot. The only thing that matters is collecting as many points as possible and to survive enough rounds after pushing your luck with the dice. The roll is random between 1 and 6, which means late game dice rolls are incredibly risky. As I showcased, you might not have enough HP to make it until the end. This means you will sometimes have to resort to winning a fight to stay alive and still get your cash out. However, winning with Fortune active will be punished in two different ways. Your streak is reset to 0, which means your next loss only grants you +1, and then you're back to receiving either 1, 3 or 5 additional points depending on which stage you currently are. At the start of the PvE cycle, you would also lose 33% of your collected stacks after winning a fight. This penalty is currently sitting at 10%. There is a pretty good chance that this number will continue to be adjusted if Fortune ends up overperforming. Winning effectively means that it is impossible to gain any relevant amount of points anymore, but at least with the new system, you won't lose as much loot. Here is an example just to showcase how different Fortune plays with a lower penalty. In this game, I start with Fortune in stage 2-1. In stage 3-6, I have the option to cash out with 57 stacks or push my luck. I'm hoping for a little bit more and I end up rolling a 4. This means I will receive my cash out in stage 4-5, which is quite late, especially considering my HP. In stage 4-2, I'm sitting at 12 HP, so I have to win my next fight just to survive. I'm currently sitting at 96 stacks, but there is no way for me to maintain this threshold. This game was on an older patch, so after winning my fight, I lose 20%, which puts me at 77 points. I win again and lose another 20%, and now I only have 61 points left. If I had cashed out before, I would have ended up with the exact same loot. If this game was played on a new patch, I would have 86 points left and at least have a better cash out than before. The new system with the 10% penalty won't help you to gain more points, but it does grant you the option of spending all of your gold and winning several fights in a row if you got unlucky with your dice roll. In some scenarios, you might even be able to win 3 fights in a row and still stay in the same loot threshold as before. Now, truth to be told, for the most part, you don't need to know the exact table. As a casual player, it will be enough to know that you want to keep a long lose streak and late game dice rolls are still very risky. While winning towards the end of a streak is now more of an option than before, you still have to feel the board that can contest against your opponents in mid to late game. There are some tricks you can use to overall improve your chances for better loot. Arguably the best opener is simply to open with a Fortune emblem. This allows you to play stronger units while only keeping 2 Fortune units on your board. Once you're certain that the fight is lost, you place the Fortune emblem on one of your units, activate the trait and collect the points. This will not mess up any streaks. You are free to repeat the strategy every single round as long as you place the emblem before the fight is over. This does become more difficult once you want to include 5 Fortune for the bonus HP, because now the trait will always be active regardless of your emblem. This can potentially ruin your game if you end up winning too early and mess up your streak. As a final tip, I would recommend to clear up your bench before your final round, because the late game cash outs don't give out large sums of gold. Most of the time, they fill up your bench with legendaries and item anvils. You don't have to worry about losing anything. You cannot pick up any loot unless there is space for it, but this also makes your transition very messy if you're not ready for it. Which comps to aim for after the cash out is not fully solved yet. I enjoyed pivoting into Story Weavers or for Trickshot, since they usually have space for several legendaries to help cap out your board. The ideal setup will likely change based around which units are currently the strongest and also on the type of cash out that you received. Do you already have a preferred comp to pivot out of Fortune? Maybe just a legendary soup or something more specific? Let me know in the comments. I hope you learned something and see you next time. So this is a 175 cash out, which is like a Radiant conversion or a bunch of legendaries. Let's see, what did we get? Oh,